Very pleased to have with us California civil rights attorney, Mr. Chuck Michel. Chuck, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, Cam.
All
We're
right.
taking some hits out here in California, but we're keeping our chin up.
Yeah, you are. Friday afternoon, it came as a surprise to me. Did it come as a surprise to you to see that the Attorney General Kamala Harris had said, all right, microstamping is now in effect?
Yes, that was caught us by surprise. We didn't realize we had thought that the patent was still in effect for quite a while. It turns out when we went back and looked into this, towards the end of last year, the owner of that patent filed a terminal disclaimer. In other words, he abandoned the patent and dedicated the patent to the public, which means this whole microstamping requirement was held up because you can't have one person controlling a technology. Essentially, it creates a monopoly if they pass a law that says, for example, you have to use microstamping, but there's only one guy who holds the permit. So there has to be sort of an open source for this technology, so that manufacturers aren't stuck with one guy. Well, he let this go to the public, out into the public now, so that companies can use it. But they never bothered to tell any of the companies that this, or us, that this was in process. So no companies are ready with the microstamping technology, and probably never will be, frankly, because manufacturers are not going to completely retool their assembly lines in order to build microstamping technology into the manufacturing process to service one market, the California market. So what's going to happen here is these guns fall off the list. They won't be able to get back. You know, we have this unsafe handgun list out here. You can't buy a handgun from a dealer unless it's been approved for sale.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep those on the list, you have to pay a fee every 3 years. And a lot of times manufacturers lose track of that, or for other reasons they fall off the list. For any new gun to get on that list, though, now they're going to have this microstamping technology, which effectively means there's not going to be any new guns on the list.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, we've been saying this for years, all of the problems with this microstamping bill. Well, now we get to see all of them in action. Let's start with, even if you were a company that wanted to compete in the California market, that wanted to try to comply with this, the law has gone into effect now, right?
Right.
So as of Friday, you cannot sell any new handgun that is not already on that roster unless it has that microstamping technology on the gun.
Bingo.
Okay. So we have manufacturers right now who are trying to keep up with an incredible amount of demand. They are months behind schedule right now, and that's just the way the marketplace is. So, Chuck, you're right. Even if you had a company that, out of the goodness of their heart, did not want to deny California gun owners their semi-automatic firearms, and so decided, all right, well, we're going to, or out of pure profit motives, decided that we were going to serve that California market. You're right. They're not going to retool their factories right now. They don't need to meet.
Yeah, why should they bother?
Right.
They can't keep up with demand as it is now. Carve California out of their demand, and they're still not going to have enough guns to sell.
This is just unbelievable. I mean, so
and here's where it gets worse.
Yeah.
Conceivably.
Okay.
Because the exception in California for the guns on the list is private party transfers. So if I want to sell you a gun, we walk into a dealer, the dealer takes the gun and does the background check on the buyer, and 10 days later the buyer can go in and pick up the gun that he bought from, that you bought from me.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's a bill pending to ban private party transfers. So even though those guns are exempt from the listing requirement, you can sell used guns that aren't on the list. If they ban those, you won't be able to. So it will only be whatever happens to be in the display case, which right now, before any of this microstamping baloney even got any traction,
Mm-hmm.
Those cases are by and large, the pickings are pretty slim.
Right.
And it's going to be even less so if they knock out private party transfers. So, this is California is the slippery slope writ large. I mean, this is the living proof that that's what the slippery slope is. They start small and they just keep going, and they do a little bit here and a little bit there, and pretty soon there's nothing left.
When do you think, Chuck, we're going to start to see the impact? And let me ask you, let me ask you another question first, because if, as we've discussed, the demand is so high right now for firearms that none of these manufacturers are going to comply with this. As you say, they don't need to. The people of California are going to be denied an entire class of firearms, very commonly owned firearms, because of this action. In your opinion, is this actionable?
Well, there's an argument. There's a Second Amendment argument to be made, but the response that any government entity is going to make is you can still buy handguns. Who's to say that? Because the Heller case said that handguns are chosen by by Americans for self-defense purposes. It's in common use they are, as a class, in common use for lawful purposes. Mm-hmm. But it didn't say you have the right to any particular handgun or any particular type of handgun or any handgun that was or was not encumbered with microstamping technology. So this is the same argument that there may be for, so-called smart guns, the biometric locking guns, or whatever the new technology that may be built into handguns is. Does that one handgun, whether it's microstamping and smart gun equipped and everything else, does that satisfy your Second Amendment right, or do you have to have this choice, this open marketplace of guns that have historically been chosen by law-abiding gun owners for self-defense? Who knows what the Supreme Court is going to say about that? It's, if you put it in front of some of the courts that have been ruling on the cases so far across the country, where they're basically, I think, turning a blind eye to the Heller decision, they're going to say, this is just regulation. It's not a ban. You can buy a handgun. You don't necessarily have a Second Amendment right to choose any handgun that exists out there.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the argument. I would disagree, but then again, I'm not an attorney.
I disagree too. But the politics of it,
right,
and the inclinations of the courts, especially in California, and maybe all the way up to the Supreme Court, is going to be, where do they draw the line between what's a regulation and what's a ban? What's really happening is it's not just the microstamping law; it's California's entire regulatory scheme that is coming together to create an effective ban on almost all handguns, especially if this private party transfer bill passes, which is, by the way, we're fighting that tooth and nail, just like all the other 40-odd bills that are in Sacramento right now. So there's nothing saying that it will pass for sure. And then maybe that will, if it doesn't, that will point out some of the problems with the whole rostering system that they have now. And then we can get more guns on the list, but we'll have to see.
All right. In the meantime, Chuck, Californians are going to have to try to live under this microstamping law?
Well, there's still guns in the display cases right now, subject to the existing shortage before this passed. So,
right.
Yeah, and look, we're getting a list of all the patents, both domestic and international, that DOJ evaluated. We want to confirm that all the pistols on the California roster as of the 17th will still be sold. We want to know how the DOJ is going to handle applications that were seeking approval for sale in the state that were pending on the 17th but hadn't yet been approved. And we want to know most specifically, what are the names of the two or more manufacturers that California has determined have this technology available to them unencumbered by this patent? Because that's one of the requirements for this certification. There's got to be a way to actually buy the technology. So I don't even know if I was a manufacturer and I wanted to incorporate this, if I could.
Right.
Who has this? Who makes this available? So it's not quite over yet. We're still looking at all the legalities of this. We're working with the NSSF and other groups to look at this very carefully. We have patent lawyers looking into it. So believe me, we're going to cover all the bases here and make sure we don't have to swallow this unless it's not susceptible to legal challenge. But in the meantime, I think folks, if you're thinking about buying a handgun, this is a good time.
All right. Well, listen, Chuck, I'm glad you could join us on the program. I know that we'll be talking again very soon. And again, thank you for doing everything that you're doing up there for California gun owners.
Thanks, Cam.